Hello! Hello, hello, hello. Stream almost didn't start because I opened OBS and it crashed my computer. That's worrying. So I'm gonna talk a bit longer in the intro here than normal because I think the game today is really short. Like, I may have picked a 5 minute guy. But it's a winner because it's by the same dude who made Kids and Plug and Play, which are these surrealist kind of game, mostly animations. And I mean, just a sneak peek. Oh no! No, show up! Don't do this to me! There we go. That that's what happens when you launch the game. Oops, let's go back. So instead, I'm going to start by talking about Voltage Genesis more, because I literally cannot help myself. So, weaknesses and resistances in video games, right? Voltage Genesis got it right. So, enemies should always be weak to something, but they should also always be resistant to something. But also, those weaknesses and resistances, it's good to have them not be static. Having them be a range, like, oh, this one's 20% weak to fire, but 50% weak to lightning. That's really good. Also, there should be something that resists each type more or less completely. Like how the ghosts, the spook lights do in Voltage Genesis. I was thinking this because I've recently been playing on my own Outward, but also Dark Souls 3. And mostly about Dark Souls, it occurred to me that ever since Demon Souls, there hasn't been an enemy who's been like totally immune to physical. In Demon Souls, there were the bugbears, the lava beetles. Hitting them with melee was almost a totally fruitless endeavor. They had like 500 health, and even a decently strong weapon would do maybe 20 damage to them. But this was counteracted in a few ways. For one, they're not very dangerous. Sure, they do a lot of damage, but they're really, really slow. Like, they, like you could outrun them while over encumbered slow. So you had lots of time to experiment, lots of time to hit them a few times and see if that accomplishes anything. Maybe stabbing, no. Maybe crushing, no. Okay, so physical's out. And then you'd start looking through your inventory. And if you've been fastidious about collecting items as you've been playing through the game, even if you haven't explored other areas, at the beginning of Stonefang Tunnel, there is a drop of sticky white stuff, which is both notable because it makes people giggle, but also it is the item that enhances your equipped weapon with magic damage. And so you might be looking through items, looking for some way to deal with the bear bug, and you'd see the sticky white stuff, and you have another giggle, and you'd read the description and say, oh, it adds magic damage. They're probably weak to that. You put it on, and now all of a sudden you're doing like 150 damage per hit, and you kill them on a few swings. And you think, wow, that's really good. The game has just taught you to pay attention to the things that have dropped and to try new things out when the standard strategy doesn't work without ever saying a word to you. Similarly, in Voltage Genesis, the spook lights are like 99% resistant to physical, but take perfectly good damage from magic, and particularly dark. Now, who uses dark? Gregory, who you, well, not always have, but who you'll have since the beginning. So, and another thing is that Voltage Genesis does a pretty good job of telegraphing what types of enemies you're going to encounter. If you're going into a dark, spooky woods, you might expect to find some spook lights. And so you'd know then, ahead of time, to bring Gregory in. And since you can swap party members freely, that's like a non-issue. That's totally fine. And so it encourages the player to use multiple of these many characters that you eventually get given. As much as I love Jimmy and the Pulsating Mass, it doesn't do this. There are, for the main game at least, there are no extra characters. Characters will join and leave your party over the course of the story, and you'll never have more than 4 until the end game. Actually, No, not even till the post game. Once you hit the post game, everyone who's ever joined your party comes back, and you can and can join you. And then you have Jimmy, and then you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have like 6 extra characters, I think, to fill your 3-member party, plus Jimmy. And so, in a game like that, you don't really want that big weakness and resistance system so much, since you might end up being unable to damage things. But it is worth mentioning for something like the Souls games, which are meant to be punishing. It's good to have stuff that totally nullifies an element, and that is there in Dark Souls 3. Yorm the Giant is 100% immune to fire. But there's nothing that's 100% immune or even like 80% resistant to physical, to any of the 3 physical types, which I find very odd. That hasn't been done since Demon Souls. It's fine even if you put it on an enemy, like the bear bugs, that are not a big threat. So you don't stonewall the player, you just slow them down or prevent them from getting to treasure or things. But then having something that's resistant to elements then seems to be more punishing players who are experimenting with different builds, or who are trying to use something that's not melee. If I were to guess, the reason why there's nothing that's just immune to melee in later Souls games is because Miyazaki decided that's how the games should be played, is melee. And if you're using ranged attacks or magic or something like that, you're taking the easy way out. This philosophy can really be seen in the updates, not of a Miyazaki game, but of Dark Souls 2. At launch in Dark Souls 2, magic was incredible. Magic was the bomb. Both hexes and sorceries just did mondo damage. And then over the course of a number of updates, they got torn apart. They got utterly gutted. And that continued, that stayed kind of until later games. Like Elden Ring, I know that sorceries, the equivalent of sorceries, are pretty weak. And this is an ongoing trend, although it really catalyzed in Dark Souls 2. I think it is a continuing trend from Demon Souls to Elden Ring. Because in Demon Souls as well, and in Dark Souls 1, magic is also a da bomb. In like New Game Plus, in Dark Souls, a hyper mode build with Homing Crystal Soul Mass can one-shot like half the bosses in the game, even with New Game Plus health bars. To say nothing of the Clever Rat's Ring plus Morian Blade plus spellcasting that's possible in Demon Souls. Same thing. Even with just regular Homing Soul Mass, it just shreds stuff. And then Dark Souls 2 comes out, and the magic's still really good until it gets updated, and things get nerfed and nerfed and nerfed and nerfed. And this persisted into Dark Souls 3, where magic is quite a bit weaker, and then into Bloodborne, or from Dark Souls 2 to Bloodborne to Dark Souls 3. In Bloodborne, where magic is really awkward. It's strong, though, but it is really awkward. And then in Elden Ring, where incantations, at least, are pretty weak. Like the laser. The laser feels like it should be amazing. And it was in Dark Souls 2, until they nerfed it. And Elden Ring got the nerfed version. So that's where that train of thought has led me, is both how it's disappointing that there are no enemies that are just like immune to physical in later Souls games, and how magic has been de-emphasized. And it's not just magic. Anything that can keep you safe in Souls games gets nerfed. They don't want you to be safe. So the Brushwood Shield, the precursor to Havel's Great Shield, the Brushwood Shield in Demon Souls was just incredible. Aside from its low magic resistance, it had 100 physical and 100 fire resistance, and there was no like lightning or anything, so it was only really vulnerable to magic. And then you had the Dark Silver Shield, which was 100% resistant to magic damage, and still 100% to physical, and then it was like 40 to fire or something. And the Brushwood Shield had incredible stability, I think peaking at like 85. And so shields were really amazing in Demon Souls. And then that's still true in Dark Souls 1. But then in Dark Souls 2 and on, you start noticing that shields get a lot worse. Stability numbers sometimes get lower, but enemies just do more stamina damage. And further, it takes longer to get shields with 100% physical, and you really never see 100% resistance in anything else. Certainly not to the extent where you could have a set of shields that combined resists everything fully. And also, there's a lot more unblockable attacks in later Souls games. Attacks that just hit through your shields, like Dragonfire. That was about the only one in Demon Souls. And grabs become more and more common as the games go on. But what's more important, what is unique to Demon Souls, is spears. Spears suck in later games. The lightning spear in Dark Souls is decent for players who haven't fully come to grips with the upgrade system, but if you upgrade a Zweihander with lightning, it's so much obviously better. Spears did just as good damage, if not better, than other things in Demon Souls. The Crescent Winged Spear, a winged spear with the Crescent upgrade in Demon Souls, was probably the best weapon in the game. Even without its shield poke ability, its two-handed R2 had the sort of lunge and then twist that did 3 hits for tons and tons of damage. And then you could go back to one-handed, hide behind the brushwood shield, and just go poka poka poka. And it was super, super good. And when I first played Dark Souls 1, I immediately gravitated towards a spear. And found out that they sucked. They did maybe half the damage, if that, compared to similar spears in Demon Souls. And that continued on. Spears never recovered. And why? Well, because they're safe. And not just them, but bows. Bows actually did really good damage in Demon Souls. You see people do bow-only builds as a challenge in Dark Souls games, because without exploits like the rapid-fire great bow glitch in Dark Souls 3, bows are really bad for actually fighting enemies that can fight back. They're only really useful for pulling enemies or for hitting enemies that can't fight back. Not so in Demon Souls. Bows were incredible. For one, they did typeless damage. So all those skeletons had like huge super duper resistance to pierce and really good resistance to slash. Bows did just fine against them because they didn't do either of those things. They just did damage. And skeletons had pretty low HP and defense to compensate for their super high slash and pierce resistance. But also bows just did good damage. The composite bow, or the compound bow, I forget, scaled really well. And the armor spider bow, which was physical fire, generally just did good damage. I don't think it scaled. The fire damage didn't scale off anything. Don't remember if the physical did or not. But also, hey, it's Demon Souls. Put that Lorian's blade in your offhand and the clever rat's ring on your little finger, and go to town at low health and do enough damage to like 3 or 4 shots some bosses, in some cases from fairly safe angles. Like, the best way of killing the Leechmonger on high new game cycles is to just outrange it with a bow in hyper mode, because there are some spots where he can't hit you even with his leech shot. But then bows got nerfed. In Dark Souls On, they became weak to the point of being only good for challenge runs, basically, as a solo weapon. But a bow as a solo weapon in Demon Souls, totally viable. Maybe even easy. It's just, it's interesting to see that progression of things that make you safe being made worse and worse and worse. And it's not like unsafe weapons were bad in Demon Souls. Another one of the best weapons in the game is the Meat Cleaver, which just kind of scaled off everything and had tons of base damage and was generally amazing. But, you know, it's dangerous. It's heavy, so you're encouraged to use it two-handed, and then there's no shield. Demon Souls without a shield, it can be done. But heavy weapons in particular I found were best in, like, Dark Souls 2 after the magic nerfs, but before the strike nerfs, because of course there were more nerfs. Dark Souls 2's update history is a history of things getting nerfed. Alright, so I've talked for 15 minutes now, which is longer than I ever do, because I think this game is going to be like 5 minutes, and I want this video, this stream, to not be 5 minutes. So that's my don't do this to me. That's my gaming theory lecture over with. Let's... Yeah, it's showing up. Let's play with a string. So this is a game. This is a game. It's really the best description for it, I think. Il Filo Conduttore. It's been described as an interactive medium with a string. I like that. Oh, that's a good sound. I like the string physics. Oh, we got a pot. I have no idea what to expect other than it won't be normal. Excuse me, swan eaty. I got a clothespin, an orange, and a coffee pot. Oh. It's not doing the do. Ah! Come back. I'm sorry. Come back. Ring, ring. Banana phone. That's not what we had before. No. No, don't leave me. Orange, a walnut, and a rock. No. I needed that. Now, this time I hope my mouse is showing up because, you know, it's mostly... It's all mouse controls. Rustle, rustle. What did they get me for Christmas? No, no, you can't have it. No, get away. Get away. No, no, you can't. Ding. Oh, good, you see a mouse. Oh! You can tune them. I was thinking, like, wait, that sort of sounds like scratching around wood like a guitar. Go, Orange, go. Huh. No, come back. Oh, goodbye. Never to be seen again. Yeah. Get out of here. Close enough. Yeah? No, get out of here. You came back. He wants me to throw it up. Bring. Give me more. I want more. Give me more. I want more. They deleted the cup. Pomegranate? Pomegranate, right? Let's make it go fast. And away it goes. Into the hole. Our sacrifice was accepted. But I wanted to make it fall over. String instruments. Developers like, I want to make a game about strings. People around him are like, yeah? What's it about? Strings. Like pull chords. And guitars. And rockets. Fine. Like, I get this Italian, that's fine. But it does, to an English speaker, just feel like, fine. Like, what do you want? I told you it'd be short. This doesn't really surprise me. Even, Kids and Plug and Play, which were sold for dollars, or sold for money, were only like 20 minutes long. So this being 8, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Alright, so that's it. That's whatever that was.